are listening to This with Krish, a show where I talk about faith, family, and the beautiful, right? And the freedom. And sometimes I also like to talk about the complicated relationships that make life what it is. Now, today's episode, I'm really excited about. I'm kind of giddy about because I didn't expect to do this episode just yet. I had thought about doing it, but this whole episode is about my in-laws. Yes, I know. Now, depending on your experience, right, that word either makes you smile or break out in a cold sweat or cringe. The latter two probably fueled by just years of pop culture on how we ought to feel about in-laws. For me, it's something I've personally had to grow with and eventually deeply appreciate, and I'll get into all of that fun stuff. Now, I want to take a few minutes today to tell you about my wonderful, amazing, incredible, adventurous, God-loving in-laws, Frank and Leann. Many of you that listen to the show, I imagine, either know them or have met them. But, you know, it's funny, okay? As I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate them more and more. But first, I got to take you down back to the future or back in time. Let's rewind a little bit, okay? So back in 2015 is when I met Shannon, my now wife. And that was during the Step Up Be a Voice challenge that I'd created doing 100 climbs in 90 days at Stone Mountain. We've got an entire mini-series, so go check that out as well. Now, that challenge was all about raising awareness for pediatric cancer. And it's, you know, I've shared this prior. It changed my life, right, in more ways than one. What most people don't know is that I actually met my future in-laws around that same week that I met my now wife. Little weird, I would suspect, but not really, right? Because Shannon brought them along one day to climb the mountain with me. And as it was on the news and it was all over the place and a lot of people had heard about the climbs, it wasn't uncommon for people to bring their friends and family and so forth to come and climb the mountain with me. So, you know, ultimately, I still stand by the fact that I believe this was all God's plan. He was putting this masterpiece together so that I would meet my now wife and my in-laws and all of these things. And we were not thinking about any of that, right? Like, we were all just caught up in the moment, doing what mattered at that moment and still matters, and that was creating awareness for kids fighting cancer. So I had met my in-laws already at this point, and I clearly remember, you know, we were like, I think, closer to the top of the mountain, and I was talking to Shannon and Frank and Leann, Shannon's parents, and so I was talking to Leann and my now mother-in-law, and we had one of those small town, small world moments, right? And it wasn't one of those like, you know, forced, hey, how do you know so-and-so? Because you're connected to this person through Facebook and yada, yada, yada. It was a real connection. And what it was is we had realized that she had taught my brother in 9th grade honors English. How crazy is that? And let me actually also mention, Frank and Leann are both lifelong educators that come from a long lineage of educators, and therefore my wife is also an educator. Frank was a middle school PE and health teacher and also lacrosse coach. I believe he had actually started an entire lacrosse program at the high school. Even, you know, he was at the middle school, but coached at the high school level. Leann was a high school English teacher and then later a drama teacher. Now, between the two of them, and they have both since retired, and they spent, you know, 20 to 30 years each in the same school system, right, shaping thousands of students' lives. And it was always impressive to me. Anywhere we went to in Atlanta later in the years, just random people would come up to them. They was like, Mr. and Mrs. Hedrick, you know, because they, you know, they had taught so many people, and they were all adults. And some of them were adults now with kids and what have you. But that's a lot of impact for any one person. But then you have a power couple like that making impacts. It was awesome to see. That first summer, I would say they instantly loved me, right? Because, well, look, I'm charming, right? um, Shannon and I got engaged 10 months after we started dating, and we got married a year after that. And honestly, those were some of the best decisions of my life. And again, I attribute all of those really good decisions to God, right? Early on, I came up with a saying that I still use today, more frequently recently. But hey, it would be something like, let's take a page out of Frank's book, and I'll get more into that, right? Because if you've ever met Frank, right, you know exactly why I said that. And it's because he's one of the most calm people and collected people you'll ever meet. He's super, super patient with me, my wife, our children, his wife Leann, the dogs. I mean, everything, right? It's just super patient. He's the kind of guy who makes marriage and parenting and friendship look effortless. He has that rare ability to just let the small stuff slide. And you know what? He probably won't even like that I'm saying this about him but he knows it's true, right? He is always smiling. And I am convinced that that kind of wisdom only comes from probably teaching middle schoolers in that, when they're in that weird age stage and doing it for over 2 decades, okay? Now, if I'm being honest, I've always been personally, if you know me, kind of a reserved person. You might not think that, right? Since I love to talk and I'm generally outgoing, but after I got sober in 2012, I learned to protect my peace, right? I became intentional about who I let into my world. I had friends, plenty of friends, but I was really sure and like to keep them at arm's length. That's going to change the color. Now that distance has always helped me after I got sober to focus on my faith, my sobriety, my purpose in life, and my career as well. So when Shannon and I got serious, I already had this internal idea of boundaries, and then of course, like I mentioned earlier, the boundaries you have to set with in-laws, okay, as we got married and stuff. And then in came Frank and Leann. Now, together, they're full of energy, they have humongous personalities, super warm, and totally in my face, right? But not in a bad way, just totally out of my personal comfort zone of what I had created up to that point. Now, I loved being engaged to their daughter, right? And I remember earlier on, I also secretly craved space. I never said anything because it wasn't about them, right? I knew that it was about me. But, man, it ate away at my soul, you guys, okay? It was my own discomfort, that was about not letting people in and not letting people too close to me. Now, Shannon, she had my undivided attention. She had my full heart. But anything else, I was just like, no, I've got you. I've got this dog named Archie. Rest in peace, Archie. When Shannon and I got married and then we became parents, and Frank and Leann became grandparents, at this point there was no escaping them, right? Popeye is what we call Frank, and Mimi is what we call Leann, were always around. And they lived, granted, at that time, we lived in, I forget, northwest Atlanta, wherever, west, I don't know where it was, but it was 50 miles away from where they lived, and they were always there. And again, I'd battle these quiet internal thoughts, wanting more space. It was selfish, I know. And then in 2020 came COVID, but also our move to Dallas, Texas, which was 900 miles away from everything we'd ever known, right? Away from Atlanta, away from our friends, from family, from my parents and my in-laws, and regrettably our beloved Georgia Bulldogs and Atlanta Braves. But I'll be honest, right? I was slightly relieved, maybe a little more than I should have been. That first year, they drove up from Atlanta twice because, COVID was early on too, right? Like I think it was like 2 or 3 months after we moved. In fact, my father-in-law helped us move all the way here. He drove here and then flew back 2 days before COVID. They also flew together to visit us, I think twice that first year, and it was nice. I may have complimented them a few times while they were here, because it was super nice, right? To miss people and then come in and spend quality time. But then, okay, the plot thickens. The news came. Right, my father-in-law was going to retire. They were getting ready to sell their house, and they had decided to move to Dallas, Texas, 2 miles from us. I can't help but laugh because it is funny. It's comical, right? Because I was like, okay, everything is so good, right? Really, I was like questioning God. I'm like, God, why? Just when I thought I had this comfortable distance from my in-laws, they came, right? They moved here. They were 2.5 miles away. We saw them all the time. We started going. They started coming to church with us. We would have Sunday night dinners, which we haven't done in a while, so we ought to definitely bring that back. And slowly, I realized, which I knew internally, that the discomfort wasn't about them at all, right? It was about me learning to grow. I remember specifically, Shannon's best friend at our engagement party says to me, "Man, you got lucky. You won the in-law lottery." My sister-in-law, she said that. People at church had said that. Like, man, wait, those you in-laws? Wow, they're super cool. You're lucky. I didn't see it, but I knew they were right. I just didn't want to acknowledge it. I know it's true because they are cool. Because they're not just cool in-laws, actually. What they are is pillars of our family. My parents are too. They're back in Atlanta, but they're here, right, present. And anytime we've ever needed help with anything, absolutely anything, they're always there, right? So that's the counter of always there, but always there, right? From hospital stays, emergency gallbladder surgeries, the birth of babies, birthday party planning, moving from home to home or town to town or state to state, airport pickups. I mean, they've never let us down. They always show up every single time. I'm not saying that every single grandparent needs to be on that level, but I'm telling you that that's what they were to us. They are to us, and that's what they do for us. Looking back, I realize how selfish my early attitude was. Right, because I wasn't protecting because I was protecting my own personal comfort when I should have been building more connection. And I enjoy going out and playing golf with Popeye or Frank, or watching Georgia football with both of them almost every Saturday during football season. Right, the message of today's show is that, right? It's get out of your comfort zone, you guys. Stop listening to pop culture. Sometimes we hold on to all of these ideas on how life should look, and we build these invisible walls, kind of like the wall down south. I'm just kidding. But invisible walls to protect our peace. And in doing so, we can accidentally keep out the very people God placed in our lives to help us grow. Not everyone is out to get you, right? I had to learn that. Not everyone is here to drain you. Some people, like Frank and Leann, are literally placed in your life to bless you. And I have to mention this, right? My father-in-law makes it a point. Every time he sees me, he's like, hey, Krish, how's everything going? How's work? And he knows how important my work is to me. And I will say sometimes I kind of am not snappy, but just give cold answers or responses. And you know what? At the end of the day, he really cares. He really wants to know. You have to step out of your comfort zone, right? Long enough to see it. And I have to remind myself again, and I've mentioned this on almost every single episode, no one is perfect, okay? Now, recently, my mother-in-law, Leann, had a brush with the C word, right? Cancer. She's recovering. She's doing well and preparing for, preventative treatment. But in moments like that, everything gets really, really clear really, really fast, right? Family is all we have. So what's the point, right, of hanging on to old thoughts and grudges or boundaries that literally serve no purpose? And I will say, my in-laws are going to watch this or listen to this, and they're probably going to be like, wait, we didn't even know Chris felt like this. Or maybe they did. I don't know. But personally, and to all of our listeners, you have to let go of those grudges and those issues that you have internally. Shed that weight, right? Feel lighter, love harder, and be grateful for everything that you have. Because a lot of families, right? I know my son has friends who don't have but one or two or zero grandparents. I didn't grow up with my grandparents. I grew up with my mom's mom was, briefly, and I didn't really have all that much interaction because life is way too short to waste on distance when connection is right in front of you. And as Frank would say, or maybe I would say, take a page out of Frank's book. Okay. Now, this has been a short episode, impromptu as even the past few have. Yesterday was all about my dad and fatherhood and, my dad's birthday, what have you. But look, I love you guys, right? I love all of you. If Frank and Leann, if you're listening, love you guys as well. And I really do mean it, right? You two are really incredible. And I'm so grateful for the family that we've built together and being introduced to your family and you welcoming me into yours. Thanks for tuning in, friends. If this episode made you smile or think, or maybe even, gave you a nudge or an urge to call your in-laws and hit that, please hit that follow button. Share it with someone who needs a little reminder that love and patience can go a long way. Until next time, I'm Krish Dokia, the host of This with Krish. And if you have not checked out thiswithkrish.com, we've got a number of articles. We'll probably be doing one on the elections and things like that transpired yesterday. So as always, I love y'all. Thank you.